So anyway, I have a question for Mr. Zack Snyder here, and I apologize if you've answered this for the fans before. I don't know the answer to this question, nor did the students. What attracted you to the DC universe and these particular characters? And then what was the genesis for your vision that is so specific and so defining of this? That's why they call it the Snyderverse. It's fascinating because it's been done, and you did it again differently and better. So where did that come from?
Well, thanks. Yeah, Zach. Well, thank you, sir. That's fine. That's kind. And also, the only thing I'll add to what Debbie was saying is that, we were talking about when she was just talking about growing wheat. For the movie we just made, we had to grow a lot of wheat, space wheat, but wheat.
10 football field,
Yeah.
Right? Like,
It's
yeah.
space wheat.
10
Gotta
football
call it,
fields.
you put space in front of anything in a space movie. You say space and then the thing. Anyway, but we learned all that stuff on Man of Steel because we had to grow all that corn. So we were corn farmers before we were wheat farmers. And so, yeah, there was a lot of agricultural. Probably you didn't learn. You guys should have a class, maybe, something to consider, like, just agricultural. So you have a little bit of like, oh, no, we can't start then because the corn won't be ready, of course. This is the wrong weather. It's the wrong, so Anyway, as far as my attraction to DC characters goes, I've been a fan. I was a huge fan of a comic book called The Dark Knight Returns, and when I was growing up, and also Watchmen, and not a bad comic book if you're into comic books. Anyway, and so I just kind of had I had a relationship with Frank because of 300, and we had done Watchmen, and so we were kind of in this headspace, comic book headspace, and I had met Chris. And he had, I think, for whatever reason, Chris didn't want to do a Superman movie, and David had written this script, and so it was really a matter of him finding someone to do this Superman movie, and he approached Debbie and I. He and Emma, we went to lunch at their house, and we just talked about what it could be. And then we read the script, and I was like, yeah, that's cool. I think I can do it. I think I would enjoy.
By the way, we read the script with someone sitting in our driveway.
Yeah,
and we had a certain amount of time to read it. We would bring him out donuts, and then we all read it out loud.
Yeah, Wes
Me,
and
Zach
Debbie.
and Wes, yeah.
Yeah.
And then they took the script from us, and it
was cool.
Very secretive.
It felt very like like clandestine, and like we were reading some sort of secret document that we shouldn't have. But it was, and then I think from there I kind of was like, well, this is what I would do, and Chris liked that, and that's kind of how the movie happened. And I think that for me anyway, the idea of like this sort of 5-movie arc, this sort of big giant like spinning of a giant universe evolved pretty quickly from the production of Man of Steel. Like, as we were working on this movie, it really started to churn in me this idea of really building out this giant world for what this could be. Because I was anxious to get to the Trinity. Because the Trinity, to me, in the DC universe, is kind of like the tip of the spear, kind of like the most important thing. Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman standing together in a world that makes sense to those 3 characters was really what was really what it was all about for me. And the mission to do that, I got pretty early in my mind as far as what the goal would be, like the first step. And even like as we were doing this movie, Man of Steel, there's some little Easter eggs to LexCorp and to the Wayne Industries satellite and things like that. And because I I had it in my head that that's what I would that's what I would get to, and so how it's defined, like whether or not it is, or how it, I guess the better way of putting it is like my intention was not to necessarily have a definitive or certain take, but it was just that I had the thing I thought would be cool, and that's all it is. And it's not, and whatever that means, because like, look, we all know what's going to happen. There'll be another Superman and Batman origin film, and even then the one that's being talked about right now, there'll be one after that, and it is a cyclical thing. It's like some sort of Matrix universe where, like, you know, they all end up in the architect's house, and he tells them that, like, no, you're not the first one. You're like the 10,000th one. So whatever, you know. So that's cool, and I'm happy to be whatever the third in the series of 1,000. So it's fine. But the truth is, it's really interesting mythological and cyclical work that I find really satisfying. So it's fun to do. It's really fun. Oh, well, that's fair.
And so
I'll agree with it. I don't know if it's true.
Just briefly.
Probably the 8th is the best, but that's fine. Just some sort of numerical thing, you know.
It's a good round number.
But that's fine. But the 3rd is also not bad.
I'm trying to imagine when you went in to see Warner Brothers and you said, yeah, you know, Superman, he's going to be really pissed off a couple of times. And Batman, he's going to like brand people like they're on the Yellowstone Ranch, and it's going to be messed up. And they just go, okay, we're cool with that, Zach. Just let him be pissed.
I mean, I think the whole thing, my whole take on Superman is that, like, obviously, you know, my intention is not that Superman is angry. It's more that he is troubled by Earth because Earth is problematic for him. And the whole idea of Superman in its sort of iconographic form is that Superman, we were talking about it just as we were watching the movie, that, you know, the potential is that he doesn't have any problems, right? Like, he's a god on Earth, and he can pretty much do whatever he wants, and there's nothing really we don't have a lot to say about it, which is Lex's problem with him, and by the way, Batman's problem with him. And so for Superman, the real work is to make him have problems, right? Like, that's the work of Superman, to make him have, whether it be romantic issues, like he can't like get the girl to like him that he likes, or whether it's like, you know, moral conundrums about what his role is as far as interfering in the lives of humans or not, or all of the issues that, you know, going against his father's wishes, all of the stuff that, and also all the stuff that we all in some ways experience on a small scale as just humans. That's really the work of making a Superman movie relatable, because otherwise, as you can imagine, you could really easily fall into a space where Superman, unless you're really efforting to contrive scenarios where he is not, you know, where he's doing things that are difficult, you know, is where you want to be. You want to be where he is emotionally having to grapple with his own humanity, you know. And I think that was the goal of the movie.
Yeah.
Really.
Well, thanks for that, because it kind of, I think in a big way, you just explained a big part of the appeal of these movies.
Yeah. No, because in the end, if you can empathize with Superman, then you've sort of won that. You've made Superman relatable, I guess, is the real thing. And I think that was the hope.
Cool. All right. Let us open this up for some questions from all of you all. I see one right over here. Lily, she's got the mic. We got somebody. So maybe stand up and we'll bring you a microphone so that they can hear you at home, as they say. Or will we? So you know what? We do. We have somebody with a microphone, but I don't know where she is.
They have it and they left.
She's
cool.
actually at the pawn shop now
I'll
with the
walk
microphone.
up. You go, Ross.
I'm walking. I'm walking.
I was going to say we can take this one.
I
off
am
here,
Vanna Whiting this.
More of a
Zach and Christina, how long did you know that Swanwick was going to be Martian Manhunter? And I know that the goal was to do Jon Stewart, but Carrie Ferris is, Hal Jordan. So I was just wondering if you knew how that was going to work at all. Thanks.
Okay. As far as I was just saying it on the stream inside that the conversations around Martian Manhunter started like in post on Man of Steel. I mean, not on Man of Steel, on PBS. Because I was watching it, when we were watching in the editorial, I was like, Swanwick. I don't know, but like, it's literally, we were talking about it earlier, like if you look at when Superman goes to the glass in Man of Steel, and everyone backs up except for Swanwick.
You don't.
And that was a choice by the actor. I was like, oh, that was cool. And I was trying to decide whether that was like wrong. But I liked it. And I was like, no, that's cool. That's good. Yeah, do that. And I think that really, in retrospect, inspired this whole possibility. And so, yeah, that's my take. And I don't know what you thought.
Well, jumping off of that, I don't remember if it was like something that, it must have been something you posted on social media. But Harry and I have stayed friends over the years. So he texts me and he's like, "Have you seen this? Like, did you know?" Because it wasn't like a thing that was chatted about lightly on set. But it was cool, and I know Harry was so excited. It was so cool. Yeah.
Harry was very happy about it. Yeah. And he's also awesome. He's literally the coolest guy in the world. So, yeah. Yeah, we should have had him out too. I think he's in New York, isn't he? Yeah, so. Although he might have flown out because he loves us.
He would have. He's gonna be jealous. Yeah. Harry's so generous. Like, he has been in my husband's indie films. He loves my husband very generously. And has just been like and if you look at his IMDb, he's in like 7 trillion things because he just supports everybody. And he's so lovely and gracious, and I can't sing his praises enough.
I know, nor can I. And the voice. The voice is insane. We have to get him to do like some Shakespeare again. So.
You don't have to. He'll just do it.
Yeah, right. That's
he
true.
loves. Yeah.
Just say do Shakespeare.
He's made his own movies actually. If you look, like he's directed, like he produces and directs stuff. He's played some Shakespeare.
All right, Sal. You guys know what to do. Sure, stand up. Yeah, face that way. No, I'm just kidding. You don't have.
Okay, so I would really love to get an insight into your world building for Krypton, because even though it's not got a lot of presence as far as runtime goes, it's incredibly dense with socio-political commentary. It's like a really heavy allegory for the military-industrial complex and the climate crisis. You have these they're very clearly representative of like Western leaders who do nothing about the climate crisis that we're all having to deal with right now. And there's a polar bear, which like, why is there a polar bear in the movie if you're not talking about the climate crisis? We do have the polar bear. But yeah, it's just,
we got him from IMAX, by the way, which is cool.
It's a highly militaristic society that they have an affinity for eugenics, and like they're bragging about not having a moral compass. So it's really densely packed, even though there's not a lot there as far as, like I said, runtime goes. So yeah, any insight you can offer into that, because I find it really fascinating.
I mean, the only thing there's a lot. I mean, yes, thank you, great question, and there's a lot to unpack with that. We could do like probably an hour of that. But I'll let Alex talk about the design, because he did touch on it, but I think there's more there. I guess for me, it was like, yes, it's a small part of the movie. Well, small, what is it, 20 minutes or something like that, or maybe less. And we knew, like, but you have to sort of do the work of making a credible world for Superman to come from. And so I think that work of, and also, you know, honor canon, kind of understand, even just on a sort of purely comic book level, you have that to do. That's the first layer. Then Goyer's script had a lot of a lot of that stuff in it, and we talked a lot about, you know, whether it be the climate crisis or whether it be like, you know, denial of how these events are going to like flesh out, and sort of like this, and then also, you know, of course, Zod and like, you know, Zod's take, this sort of coup. And also, I think the thing about Zod that's really interesting is his like, you could argue whether or not he's right, you know, like that's what makes him interesting, right? Because like from his point of view, you know, he also like thinks they're crazy, right? That the politicians don't get it. So it's like, but is his method the correct method? You know, like, so like all of those layers, I think were informative in discussions. We would say like, how do you then visualize like a world like that, and also make it beautiful, right? Because in a weird way, it still has to be like compelling and beautiful, like no matter what. Like even if, you know, Jor-El's house looks like a giant penis, but there's a reason, you know, there's a why to it. And I think I was like I thought that was awesome, by the way. And I think that the Citadel is very like very strong and very. Well, they were trying to, you know what they're trying to do in there. So it's very interesting. It's very cool. But anyway, I guess my point is that, you know, that goes back to what we were just talking about, I think, as far as, you know, you have story, you have intent, and then Alex has a really hard job because he has to, like, none of that stuff exists, right? Like, you know, Krypton is a mythological place and it doesn't exist even as it does in the movie. So like, even if you were going to go look at historical Krypton as it is in the comic books or in movies, we weren't going to do that. Like, we were going to be like, no, okay, can we learn from it? Yes. Can it inform? Yes. But I think in the end, because our story is so particular, the design has to service that story. But of course, without denying and or contradicting the canon and tradition in some way. So it's that's the challenge anyway.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about the form language, and there is a lot of penis in there.
Thank God. There's a lot of vaginas in the scout ship, which is also great.
Absolutely.
So it's.
But I think what you're
not hard to see, I think.
Gender equality.
It's not a
That's
surprise.
What, you know, we're always
represent. You got to represent.
But you're asking about the mythology, and I think that's where, I mean, the opportunity to build Krypton really from scratch and build 150,000 years, 100,000 years of deep history, and to be able to follow the destruction or the self-destruction and why that happens, and why the glyphs that they're wearing, you know, the S is not an S, or the glyph on Zod's chest is tied back into the idea of these clans that essentially drill down into their own culture so much that they eliminate science, and so we've got this incredible world to start with, but then we have to sort of invent from the ground up. And the through line and the holistic kind of consistency of the world in design is crucial, and the level of detail that you put into it may not be on the surface, but it informs the surface. So I think the example that was incredibly satisfying, I've never done since, never been asked to do before was when Zack wanted a language, where to begin with, I think you wanted a language that they could speak.
Yeah, my original concept was that on Krypton it was all going to be subtitled, and they were going to learn Kryptonian, and that was going to be just how the movie was. Like they were like you wouldn't. And then my original idea was like no subtitles, like it's like Passion of the Christ. It's like Aramaic or something. Like you just have to kind of understand. Like you have to just sort of figure it out from the content. That was yes, exactly. That was how like crazy it was at the beginning. And then everyone's like, "You're insane."
Yeah, I think I said, "Are you kidding me?"
Yeah. I was like, but like, isn't that cooler? Like I don't know.
But it actually wove through all of Krypton in the end because you asked that question. And then we hired a linguist anthropologist who invented an entire language from the ground up and a numeric system, and it related to the idea that the object was so important in the society that it created or changed the structure of the sentences. So if you have your Krypton dictionary, you can actually decipher a lot of the the writing on the objects, because it's all real, it's all translated, it's all based on the language that Zack wanted them to speak, basically. But then it informs the visuals, like the S informs the visuals. The shape of the language embeds itself in the shape of the biology lab and actually the creatures, and particularly the ships, because you're right that Krypton's there in the first 20 minutes, but the design of the ships and the behavior of the ships and the costumes, that weaves through the whole film, and you never forget Krypton because the core visual language and that early work that we did informs every single aspect of how that world works, and the inside of a ship in a way is just a continuation of Krypton.
Wow.
I don't care what the lawyers say. Yeah.
All right, I want to stay on Ezra because we have a question that came in from Vero, and thank you very much, guys, for submitting your questions. This one says, the Flash in the Batcave telling Bruce that Lois is the key is one of my favorite scenes ever. Would we at any point have seen the other side of that, seeing the scene from the Flash's perspective?
Absolutely. Yeah, the whole thing was that we would. Well, I guess we were talking about it just a minute ago, that the idea was that in whatever Justice League that would have been, Justice League 2, I guess, you would have seen there was a scene where they were getting ready to, Flash was getting ready to go back in time, and the idea was that he said to Bruce said to him, like, that there were two possible windows in which he could jump back through time, and Bruce said, well, which one would you have gone through if I didn't say anything? And he said, well, we were going to go through this one. He said, don't go through that one, because he went through it, it didn't work. Right. I said, you came, so go through the other one. So you would have seen that, right? So then he would have gone to the correct moment.
And he had to tell him something that would make him believe.
Yeah, and he would have to tell him something, yeah.
Yeah.
Which at that time was that, in the other reality was that the child of Lois Lane's child was his.
Right.
That's what he told Bruce to make him believe that he was really from the future.
Yeah, it's getting
So good.
Yeah.
We need a chart. We need some of those.
We need a chart.
We need some of those.
The chart exists, yeah, that's it.
Am I wearing it?
Yeah, you might be. You might be wearing it, yeah, you are wearing
on
it.
this shirt? Yeah, it's on there. Zach, I want to ask you about this because you do something in BVS that you eventually do in Justice League as well too, which is that you open essentially on a scene that was pivotal from the previous movie. The idea you showed it to us from a different point of view. The idea to put Bruce on the ground in Metropolis during the invasion, the idea of showing us Superman's scream opening the mother boxes. I'm curious if there's a deeper narrative backing behind that you want to start in a way to kind of bridge to the previous film, or it's just that coincidence the way that those two have opened?
I guess for me it's just because the stories are so intertwined, it's just important to catch you up on what's happening specifically in the moment you just left, and that, I think by backtracking a teeny bit or overlapping, it allows the continuity of the story to continue. And I think that really that's the main reason. I mean, in BVS, in this movie, there's a real cyclical nature to the film. Starts with a casket, ends with a casket. It's very much a circular kind of affair. But it does lead into Justice League, and it does come from Superman. So that was also really important to me. So.
Gotcha. And then before we turn it over to you guys in the audience, I have one more I wanted to ask about. Excuse me. It's clear that the Ultimate Edition BVS is the definitive version. I don't think there's anybody here that would disagree. I mean, you hear from virtually every fan that they prefer it over the theatrical cut, and most say that it's a different movie because of the way that it plays. If I'm being completely candid with you, I connected with the Ultimate Edition more than I did the theatrical cut.
That's fine.
And I wanted to ask you if it's challenging to know that like the first step into the world of a story that you worked on is a version that might not be the Ultimate Edition, might not be the best one to put out there.
Look, the truth is that I have, you would think by now that people would know that I have a certain relationship with the director's cuts of my movies and my relationship to the marketplace and how that, I think if analyzed in retrospect over the course of my career, you can kind of see a bit of a pattern developing. And maybe by the time it reached VBS, people kind of, mainstream pop culture hadn't really come around to or understood how that concept works with me. And I think that I'm okay with it because I understand that, movies are expensive and they are on one hand this incredible vision of like what you think is cool and all that stuff, but on the other hand, they're a product that someone paid you a lot of money to make. Mm-hmm. So there's a balance there, and we all understand that, you have to, they own the movie in the end, right? Mm-hmm. It's their movie, it's their IP, it's everything, and we're just kind of, we're stealing it a little bit to make our movie. And so that balance is delicate. And so I guess for me, that this version of the movie exists at all is what I'm happy about, right? Thank you.
In this film, we see Diana in a picture in 1918 with Steve and her crew, which we eventually see in Wonder Woman. A couple of years ago, you posted a picture of Wonder Woman 1854 in an Elseworlds storyline from Stephen Berkman, I believe. He shot the
Stephen shot it, yeah.
Which is dope.
Yay, Stephen Berkman! Also Art Center alumni and teacher.
Oh, okay, awesome. What's unique about that photo is we see a lot of warriors from different cultures being represented. And for me, though it didn't maybe pan out because of whatever may have happened the past 10 years, saw a Sikh warrior right next to her right shoulder. And I wanted to say thank you for including me at that level because besides showing my people as, taxi drivers or, I really like that you showed off, even though it's very, small, it meant a lot to me. As a fan, I really want to know how would have that storyline panned out. If you can shed some light. I know it's crazy.
The idea, I don't know if I've talked about this, I don't know. The idea of it was that in those days, because Diana was searching for the god of war, searching for Ares around the world, she would have gone to, in her sort of quest to find him, she ended up going to all the hot spots where all these conflicts were in the world. And then in those conflicts, looking for Ares, she would come across some amazing warrior on the battlefield that she would say, hey, I'm looking for this god of war. I need, a team to help me. And that was the basic concept behind who all those guys were. And that they saw her on the battlefield and she was so insanely powerful that they were like, yeah, I guess in service of this goddess, like that, is even more powerful than like the surface of my country or whatever I'm doing, whatever political war I'm in. This goddess asking me to join her is like, that's like quite an honor. And so that's why when we see her in Crimea, she's ended up with those cats that are with her from like, you know, her journey around the world.
What do you think about the first day that you heard Zimmer's theme for Wonder Woman?
Oh yeah, I remember being down in his little his crazy studio, which is amazing, down in Santa Monica. It's kind of like a, I don't know, it's kind of like a cool, I don't know what, it's like a, it has a lot of bookshelves and like sculptures in it. It looks a little bit like the Phantom of the Opera setup. In the middle, you're kind of on these old sofas. It's really cool. It's like, and then he was like, okay, here we go. This is it. What do you like? I think he kind of sprung it on me. Like he said, this is going to be, I think this is a cool way to introduce Wonder Woman. And he played it, and we were literally, it's exactly as it is, and it just blew us away. And I remember just going like, wow, because we did talk about it being like this tribal kind of like visceral, like instead of, you know, as a way to introduce Wonder Woman, I think a lot of people thought, or you could think about it in a lot of different ways. And that was kind of a surprise sound for her, but totally fits her. And it's a thing that's endured, I think, with her over the movies a little bit. Sure. And, you know, I think that just is a testament to how sort of unique and exciting it was. And clearly I loved it. So that's incredible.
All right, let's see, where do we go?
So I know it was hinted, essentially, that Kara was one of the survivors from the ship with the open pod and the skeleton.
Sure.
I was just curious when you were going to actually bring her in, if you had any, thought of bringing her into one of the later movies.
No, tell the real story.
Oh yeah.
Tell the real story. Tell the story that broke the studio at the time.
Turn off the cameras.
I'll let DJ say it.
You mean about like where that guy was or where that person went?
So remember, we liked the idea that, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Well, like, you know, it's this whole thing with like
Ares and Zeus.
the gods and Ares and Zeus,
Yeah.
and whether or not like Zeus was really possibly a Kryptonian,
Yes.
and that so that Wonder Woman's powers, anyway, you can sort of see where that's going, you know? Because, you know, the whole thing of like whether or not magic and the gods, you know, there's a version where like, okay, that's cool, I guess. But like, you know, there's also the more sort of scientific kind of, you know, you have like a mythology built up of like, where do gods come from? Like, what is that about, you know? And so anyway, we had played around with that quite a bit.
Yeah. And Ares was the one that caused the scout ship to crash.
Yeah.
And be in the ice.
Yeah.
Yeah. He killed his crew. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can't just throw that out.
What the hell?
I just did.
More details. Come on, DJ. They ask some questions for you.
We have a lot of conversations
That's
about
right.
the show.
Abort.
Yeah.
Aren't you glad DJ came instead of that?
Larry might have said that too.
All right, other questions. Batman right there had his hand up first. Yes. you said
Batman?
yes.
Oh, that man.
That man had his hand up first.
Batman's over there.
You're next, Batman. I'll get you.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah?
I'm going to ask you something I've been wondering about since the first Batman vs. Superman trailer. One of the elements that you introduced in that trailer was the dead Robin suit in the Batcave. Robin's death at the hands of the Joker was teased again in Suicide Squad and your version of Justice League, but was never shown on screen. What were the events leading up to and resulting in Robin's death in your universe?
I'll do a brief one because I think that that's still something that would be cool for people to see at some point. I don't know when or ever, but I don't want to ruin it. It may never happen, but
On Netflix.
yeah, nice.
He thought Zack Snyder's Justice League wouldn't happen.
Yeah, that's
So,
true.
Never say never.
suffice it to say that, like, you know, to hurt Batman, obviously, you know, he has, at that point, he had, his real vulnerability was Robin, right? And so I think that what's obvious is that the Joker understood that, right? And all I'll say is that, you know, I think I've talked about this a little bit, haven't I? That, you know, he clearly blew him up, or it looks like he's burned, scorched him. I think beyond that, I really don't want to say the actual circumstances because I feel like it's a spoiler for maybe a thing that will never need to be spoiled, but we should wait to see, don't you think, a little bit?
Can I try a Joker follow-up?
Sure.
It might be a spoiler for something that we might get to see at some point in the near future at some point. But in the nightmare sequence of Justice League, it's made very clear that Batman had to bring Joker along because he was going to be important somehow.
Right.
How might he be important to the mission they're trying to complete?
Our theory is that he's the one that knows where the kryptonite, what shards of kryptonite exist. He has that information. And so he's being carried. So he's basically made a deal with Batman. Don't kill me, and I'll show you, I'll get you a tool to fight Superman. And so he's kind of stuck with him in that way. And so, like, if he kills him or gets rid of him, then he's screwed himself.
So who's going to give him the reach around?
Yeah, exactly. That is true. There's a couple other people there.
Batman, over here, Batman. Stand up and a mic will come to you.
Nice. Stand up and a mic will come to you. Wow, it's cool.
So
It's kind of philosophy.
It's kind of like a Snyderverse related question, but like I saw Watchmen, I loved it. Casting was perfect. Casting for Justice League, Batman vs Superman, perfect. Like I don't know if you're familiar with Doomsday Clock, but I was wondering if that was like in your vision or if like what you think of it, and like was that ever gonna like come to like fruition eventually in the future?
Please no. The Doomsday Clock?
Doomsday Clock.
It was like the crossover between Watchmen characters.
Yeah, was that the Jeff Johns?
Yeah.
Jeff Johns.
Yeah, probably not. Like I said, probably not.
We should end on a more positive.
That's all right. A quick one. We should have just gone to the lobby.
Our incredible director, Mr. Zack Snyder. My dear friend and a damn fine actor and the soul of this movie, Mr. Ray Fisher.
Yes, it is true.
And we have one final person to announce. Brilliant writer, brilliant director, brilliant actor, and I think the finest Batman I have ever seen, Ben Affleck.
We have I think we have a sharing mics in our small.
All right, so we'll share. I'll let him scream a little.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's very nice.
I don't exactly understand what you're saying, but it seems positive, so I want to say thank you.
Positive group. Home team, home crowd.
So I'm meant to kick this off with some questions from the Vero community. I'm going to read those out, and then we're going to just, I guess, basically open it up to questions, discussion, whatever.
Fair enough.
Fair enough. All right. So this first one is from Matt. This I'm assuming is to Zach, not to me. The work you and Chris Terrio accomplished in BVS and Justice League was simply brilliant. Do you have any plans to collaborate with Terrio again in future projects?
Well, if Chris would have me, of course. It's always a question, just of like, he's a busy man, so Look, I love Chris more than anything. He's a genius, so yeah, of course I would love to work with Chris anytime he wants.
Well, what's he gonna say? I'm sitting right here. I hate that short little motherfucker. But yeah, of course I collaborate with Zach again. I mean, when we find, of course.
This is from Stephen Mark Monteith. What other new gods characters did you plan to feature in the JL movies? Because I don't like being alone. And how much development would they receive? We saw Granny Goodness, so would we have seen the Furies? What about the other members of Darkseid's family?
Yeah, for sure. All of them. I mean, he had to really get an invasion force together, and I think he was going to, get his own.
There was going to be a Christmas album, too, right?
Really beautiful.
Yeah.
And a special. So, yeah. I think the answer is
for sure.
Yes. The Furies for sure. We talked about that a lot.
Yeah.
I'm going to say something here, Zach, which is that I've read chatter about the anti-life equation and how did Uxas Darkseid lose it as though it were his keys, but we would have taken that up in the second episode. You would have understood some apocalyptic betrayals and palace intrigue that would have explained how that all happened. So if ever a miracle happens and more of this story is made, you'll understand more of that because there was a plan there.
So the last Vero question is from Dylan. It says, Cyborg's vision depicts Kilowog dead at the site of the Hall of Justice, but he's not with the Nightmare League in the sequence at the end. Is this implying the existence of numerous Nightmare timelines, with the one we see in JL2 just being the final one where Barry successfully activated the cosmic treadmill to warn Bruce in time? Or was it just something you thought would be cool?
That's pretty fair. It's a pretty fair question. I would say that particular shot, the one, in the flash moment where he sort of has all those visions of the future, that one I think is more impressionistic than the actual hard timeline that you see in the final sequence. So I think that's probably the answer, is that he's seen, I would say, a more metaphorical vision of the future than an actual hard reality in that one sequence.
To this pathological jingoism and then de-radicalization, to which he then has to navigate the aftermath of what he's done. And then for Chris, your writing in these films is incredibly politically dense and layered. You've got false flag operations, false testimonies as war propaganda, and, I appreciate your advocacy for whistleblowers in the story, given what's happened to other journalists who have told the truth. So for the both of you, how have these big political topics informed your creative process as storytellers in these films?
So starting off with an easy one. That's cool.
Well, there's a thing that Bruce says in BVS, which is if there's even a 1% chance that he could destroy the world, then we have to treat it as an absolute certainty. And that seemed to be something that was happening in the wars of our time, right? There was this idea that there's an axis of evil, and if there's even a minuscule chance that there's going to be a suitcase nuke in New York City, then we have to treat it as a certainty and we have to make war. So that idea that was going through Bruce's head was informed by everything that we were looking at in the world. And so we self-consciously wanted to ask that question, and then also politically, when you have the character of Kahina Ziri and intervention in Africa, that's a thing that Superman has done traditionally, right? Superman intervenes, and there are clear good guys and clear bad guys, and then truth and justice save the day. So that was another thing that we wanted to kind of complicate and say, well, what actually happens when Superman intervenes? It seems like he's intervening to save Lois, but what other lives are affected? Superman says about the danger to Lois, think of what could have happened, and she says, think of what did, pointing at all the stuff that happened in the village. So that was another conscious thing, not to try to make Superman a villain or to say Superman is wrong, but just to say it's a little more gray and complex than maybe traditionally has been, at least in the films, has traditionally been presented. In some of the comics, there is a lot of shade of gray in Superman and his work.
Yeah. That's one of the things that I love about working with Chris and have since I met him and got to know him, is that he operates as a screenwriter on a lot of different levels simultaneously, where you have a plot story that's very keen and paced and makes sense, and you have character stories that are connected and compelling and interesting and nuanced, and oftentimes there are thematic corollaries that don't impose themselves and stand out in front of the movie so that it's a screed or that it's didactic, but rather it's kind of marbleized into those two other elements, so that if it's something that you're interested in, if it's something that resonates with you, it works on that level. Additionally, if it's something with which you're about which you're not interested or aware, it sort of goes by, and yet there's a kind of I've always get the sense with Chris that the plot is sort of if the screenwriter is the cat burglar breaking into the house, the plot is sort of the meat that's thrown to the guard dogs, while the themes kind of break their way into the window, so to speak.
Oh, wow.
I've had an amazingly, my experience with you guys and with this material has been incredibly satisfying, and I couldn't be happier with the way that you guys have been able to dig in. We always talk about if you want to go deep on these movies and on this mythology, it's there for you, right? And so, yes, would I be interested in whatever medium or whatever way these ideas would continue? Of course I would. But in the meantime, we forge ahead and we do what we do, and so like that. But yes, thank you. But I love this world, and I love these guys that I've gotten to do this with, and it's been amazing. So thank you.
I have one question, and Ben Affleck, you're the greatest Batman ever. Mr. Snyder, looking at that post-credit scene with, Deadshot, what was the plan for Batman's Ben Affleck for that story?
There was a whole elaborate plan, which would take up too much time now, and some of which I may have forgotten. But I always liked that character and talked to Zack about that, and I think there's my plan for continuing on in this character. At a certain point, I got to and kind of found that I thought I wasn't really, I just felt like, well, I wasn't quite sure if it worked or jived. And I felt like if you have a character like this and you kind of take that on, you want to go forward, you better really be sure and understand it and be confident. And certainly as a director, you kind of have to be the last person interested in the movie when everyone else is really bored and doesn't want to watch it again and is sick of it, exhausted by the whole process. And I have held myself to this kind of metric where if I'm not really sure I see the precise location on target that I want to hit, I'm not sure I can hit it, but I want to at least know exactly what I'm aiming for. But there's, as all of you have kind of mentioned, there's a spectacular array of characters in this universe, and also I think, they are ultimately like, I know that we sort of become like attached to them as exist in these particular forms, but I think of watching Zack stuff and whatever he does, I find interesting and enjoy this kind of manifestation of his work and his art. And with Chris, you see people's, like, it doesn't necessarily have to be wearing one face to tell an interesting story. There are certainly, a response to this gentleman's question, there are a lot of different ways to do that. And so I don't get too wrapped up and like fixated on that one thing, or at least that's the way I soothe myself.
Oh, you're coming through. Hello, guys. Oh my gosh, this is cool. Zach, how close are we, and will we ever be able to get to see that Jon Stewart Green Lantern deleted scene?
Well, would I ever be able to? Listen, I don't have it right now. There was a, property was returned. But it does exist. You won't say anything. That's cool. I know you won't. Of course, wow, it's only live. Turn off the cameras. But, yeah. So I would have to say, look, I think just me saying Wayne did an amazing job in the little scene. And I really love him. And it was nice of him to come over to the house and shoot it with me. And he's an amazing actor. And so, yeah, he's a cool guy. But yeah, as far as seeing it is, I don't know when that will ever happen. But, never say never. So, of course, I already have it. That's cool. You're not talking about the Jesus Batman, just Batman, or the Jesus Joker, just Joker in general. Yeah, no, there was like, these guys were on a mission. It was a kind of a mission movie moment or beginning of where like it was like a buddy picture, where the two protagonists were like at odds and they had to like work out their differences over their travels across the country. No, but I mean, in a way, that's what you could see. In some ways, that's what they're on about. They're on this little journey. And I guess, for me, one of the reasons why I wanted to do that scene was because I felt like, I was really happy with the way that these two guys, that the Batman and Joker in that scene, and it's only a little taste. I just felt like it was rude for us to have gone through this entire sort of DC universe with the two characters that should be, with each other at odds, I guess, having not really coexisted on film in that way. And I had in my mind wanted that to be part of the movies as they went forward. And I just really felt like this scene was important, for this universe. And Ben was gracious enough to come and do it, and Jared put on the cape one more time. Oh my God! And then Jared also, was awesome, and it took some convincing, but it was really fun. It was fun to do the bit,
Yes, you had one. Here.
Oh, thank you.
I'll sit down.
Yeah, just so you know.
Hello, everyone. My question's for everyone in this panel, including our gracious host. My name is Carlos, and I just want to say thank you all for doing this. The foundation we're supporting, the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, that's a battle I've struggled with personally. And these movies, you know, the stories you've directed, the characters you've emboweled, the things you've written, edited, and just being a part of in general, it gives hope to so many people, way more than just this theater of loving fans. These stories speak to us, and even though we can't fly, we can fight, no matter who we are. And I just wanted to ask you guys on a personal level, for every one of you, it could be a sentence answer. On a personal level, how do you feel knowing that you're part of something that gives hope to so many people that really need it?
It's the greatest honor of my life to be here, to be a part of this, to be included in this, to be a few people's nightmares and all of that sort of thing. You know, it is and has been and will continue to be just absolutely the greatest honor. And I buy every T-shirt that ever comes up for AFSP, and I hope you do too.
I guess for me, we do these things, we make this giant thing, but then to have it have, you know, and I've had the pleasure of having like a lot of, interactions with people who I get to hear their stories and get to understand what they've gone through, just like, you know, has it impacted our families. And, so that sharing for me is incredibly moving and really lets me know that there is not only is there work to be done, of course, but being proud of the work that we are doing and the progress that we are making. You know, there's always it's a hope thing, you know, and I think and I think that is that for me is incredible, again, amazing honor. And I love that you guys enjoy the movie, and then I feel like it's the smallest thing I can do for, because I really, love the outreach that everyone gives, and it's amazing.
I can take both mics. To mimic what's been said, it's an honor. It is, and it's also a great responsibility. I think for me, I've learned a lot from playing this character. I learned a lot from the people that have supported this film. It's the culminating phrase that I think encapsulates it best is, I'm not broken and I'm not alone. And in myriad ways, you guys have shown me and one another that you are not alone, and that anything is possible when you put the collective together to go ahead and tackle a problem. And so for anybody out there struggling, for those of you who are struggling now, for those of you who struggled in the past, for those of you who may know somebody who is going through it, just please do your best to iterate and reiterate to them that they are not broken and they are not alone. And make sure that you direct them to the resources like the AFSP that exist out there. Thank you for everything you guys have done.
Thank you very much for what you said. I have a lot of admiration and respect for the bravery it takes and sense of self to stand up and talk openly. I think that's extremely helpful and good. And thank you. And both any association with an effort like this is an honor, certainly. And kind of a similar way, I could sort of look at my own life, in a lot of different ways. But the truth is, I'm old now, right? I've done 55 or 60 movies. But the movie the character that people most commonly approach me about in my own first-person experience is undeniable as this character in these movies. And it clearly has an enormous reach and impact on people. It means a great deal to people. And that's, I think, the only appropriate reaction to that is a sort of gratitude and humility. The gratitude that I owe Zach for bringing me into this project, for Chris, who he wrote, Ray, and everyone who worked on this, and to the fans who, without whom it doesn't come to life. And I appreciate and hope it's true that these kind of fables, these stories, that can in ways sometimes we're not even aware of, be moving and meaningful to people. And if that's the case, I would just say I'm humbled.
Well, first, thanks for being so candid about that. Because I relate very deeply to everything you're saying. In this film, every single one of the major characters is dealing with loss. Everyone, Lois, Martha, Diana, Arthur, Barry, Bruce, and so that became the important heart of the film, of how to take in loss, take in the darkness that's trying to pull you down, and to answer affirmatively and to fight back, fight back against it. So all those things, I'm grateful if anyone feels them, because they were deeply felt on the end of us who are making it. I mean, you can't make a movie that has emotion in it unless you have sat alone with those characters and with those thoughts and figured out some of that stuff for yourself. So it makes me really happy if it lands anywhere. So thank you.
I guess for me, I just feel lucky to be asked by my friends Zach and Deb to be a part of this, and the whole journey getting to the end of the Zack Snyder Justice League cut, and the effort of that work. It's very emotional, cathartic. I wish we could do more, because I think there's a lot of story left to tell. But the thing that I kind of take with me is, and everybody's efforts through this organization, is it's my first time yesterday being on the panel and meeting a lot of you afterwards, and I'm inspired by you guys being inspired by what we've done. I think it's, like Ben said, it's a very humbling thing, and something that I think was unexpected for me as a personal note. So thanks everybody for paying attention.
There were a number of them that I was kind of exploring, and the plans were to, make interesting, nuanced, complex characters, in particular for the character you mentioned. And I didn't really, I kind of feel like either you do, I'm just going to get into my own preference here, but either you do like a kind of massive, kind of one villain that is so formidable, you just can't imagine how it is that your protagonist is going to be able to overcome it, or you have to sort of really populate kind of the Injustice League, these big group villains where you get to have all these different characters. So I was at the time really trying to kind of hone in and focus on that character and get into depth and detail about it to make him seem as impressive as I felt like there was the opportunity to do. And other than that, that's the only detail I have for you.
Way back in the back there, in the back corner. Is that that corner, back corner MC? Yes, hello you. Yes, hi. I think a mic is probably a good idea. Yeah.
I mean, for me, I have a real, I don't know. It's been my experience that I just go like, I pretty quickly like, oh yeah, that's that first person. Like that's that guy. Get that guy. Or like, I see casting tape and I'm like, yeah, that's right. And I feel like my gut is probably the best. I know that people like, oh yeah, my gut instincts are that. Anyway, I know it's not really very helpful for anyone else. But yeah, I feel like the casting in this movie, just I think across the board, these guys have done. Obviously, even just we forget that like at the time that the movie that we put the movie together, pretty much, these guys like Ezra, I just was like, Ezra's cool. Ezra's Flash, it's like that was kind of how I did it. Like Gal, we tested a bunch of different actresses, and Gal was just, from the beginning, I was like, I want Gal. And they were like, oh, well, you need to see a bunch of people because, it's like a big part of Wonder Woman. And she's not like super big star or anything. I was like, okay, well, I just feel like it. And then we tested her with that, and they did a little scene, and I was like, actually, what's cool is, I looked at it the other day, there's like in the little video that we did, a little audition. I don't know if you remember this, but then like at the end of the take, it was a one shot. It was like over him. It was like did it because whenever you do a because it was a before the film made, and you don't want to expose yourself to the studio too much, right? And you don't want to say like, oh, is this going to look like I don't like this. And I'm like, not about that. We're trying to do an audition. It's like any chance for them to not comment on anything but the thing that you want to comment on. That's try to do that. So I was like, okay, this is one take, even though it starts out as the two shot, and it was in the little scenes like Wonder Woman waiting for Bruce Wayne, and he's walking down the street. We shot it all on like a sort of fake set. It didn't look like a street, but it was like there's some cars parked around. And then he would walk out, and it was a two shot on him. It was a tight two, and then it would turn into an over. And it was just sort of a single on Gal. And they were kind of talking about like you guys got drinking and all this like really intense stuff, and like what's the matter with you, Bruce, blah blah. She was really going at him. And at the end of the day, the one good one, like it's on bench shoulder like this, and Gal is here. And at the end of the day, he turns around and we gave okay. Like I don't think we have to do this anymore. And it was cool because that's just of course the reaction was so clean. Like left it in for the studio. So they were like, I don't know getting a comment. That's that. Yeah, why are we doing it? And I know about that. Yeah, that was cool. It was really cool. And I think those things. I guess for me, it's like there is, and it's impossible to say. I mean, it's just like when we're talking about Christina Red during Man of Steel. I was like, watching TBS on summer for like that. So they had to track her down and like find her. But I think that I don't know. I don't know how, but it's just.
Like maybe humble to say that there's a sort of case, right? Like, and those had told me about. I was here before I that is directing 90% cast. And I was skeptical of that as the years have gone by, I become more and more convinced of it. And it is as you look at all these actors that cast, how they are, they've gone on to do it. So it's to Zack's taste. And his taste very, he says to it in one movie, he has a feeling, he's sort of being like a filmmaker with a point of view is, as soon as he sees that thing and bounces off him, it's very, very wonderful to work with somebody who's not clouded by a bunch of thoughts on opinion, whatever they say, that they would do, or they or they follow whatever it is, immediately, and he has an opinion and strong on what's come along as an actor, whether like am I doing that? You want me to do you don't? You know what I mean? Both fine. I just want to know that's not 15 on you know what I mean? The whole and that's the one of the beautiful things about Zack and his process that he is works by instinct and decisive and absolutely self-assured and it's a very calming thing to have a director go, okay, he knows what's going on, so Wow. Blue shirt right there, waving both arms. Is this going to be the last one?
Guys, this is going to be the last one.
Guys, so sorry.
Guys, stay paid for what you can't actually say.
They are throwing us out for Mario. So after this, it's going to be radio. All right, so go for it.
Too kind.
I mean, for me, I have a real, I don't know. It's been my experience that I just go like, I pretty quickly am like, oh yeah, that's the person, like that's the guy, get that guy, or like I see a casting tape and I'm like, yeah, that's right. And I feel like my gut is probably the best. And I know that's stupid, like, oh, my gut instincts are like, anyway, I know, but it's not really very helpful for anyone else. But yeah, I mean, I feel like, the casting in this movie, just I think across the board, these guys have done, obviously, even just we forget that like at the time that the movie that we put the movie together, pretty much, these guys like, Ezra, I just was like, Ezra's cool. I just want Ezra to be the Flash. It's like that was kind of how I did it. Like Gal, I was like, oh, Gal. We tested a bunch of different actresses, and Gal was just, and from the beginning, I was like, I want Gal. And they were like, okay, well, we should do, we need to see a bunch of people because, it's like a big part of Wonder Woman. And she's not like super big star or anything. And I was like, okay, well, I just feel like it's right. And then we tested her with Ben. They did a little scene. And I was like, see, actually, what's cool is I looked at it the other day. There's like in the little video that we did in the little audition. I don't know if you remember this, but Ben, at the end of the take, it was a one shot too. It was like over him. It was like we did it because whenever you do because it was before the film was made, and you don't want to expose yourself to the studio too much, right? And you don't want him to say like, oh, is this what it's going to look like? Like I don't like this. And I'm like, it's not about that. We're just trying to do an audition. It's like any chance for them to not comment on anything but the thing you want them to comment on. You try to do that. So I was like, okay, we'll do this as one take, even though it's like starts out as a 2-shot. And it was in the little scene, it's like Gal's Wonder Woman is waiting for Bruce Wayne, and he's walking down a street. We shot it all on like a sort of fake set. It didn't look like a street, but it was like there's some cars parked around and whatever. And then he would walk up, and it was a 2-shot, and then it was a tight 2, and then it turned into an over, and it was just the sort of a single on Gal. And they were kind of talking about like, you got to stop drinking and all this like really intense stuff, and like, what's the matter with you, Bruce, and blah blah. She was really going at him, and at the end of the take, and the one good one, because it's on over Ben's shoulder like this, and Gal was here, and at the end of the take, he turns around and looks in the camera. He's like, okay, like, I don't think we have to do this anymore. And it was cool because like that's of course the reaction was so clean that like I left it in for the studio, so they were like, oh,
as an unwitting accomplice.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember that's the only time that's ever happened to me where I was like, that's obvious.
Yeah, like why what are we doing? Yeah,
there's nothing else.
Can I go home now?
I've done that with a bunch of people.
Yeah, no, it was cool. It was really cool. But like, and I think that those things, I guess for me, it's like there is, and it's impossible to say. I mean, it was just like, when we were talking about Christina Wren during Man of Steel, I was like literally watching TV. I saw this hummus commercial. I'm like, that girl, I want that girl in the movie. So they, we had to track her down and like find her. But I think that I don't know. It seems I don't know how, but it just
an instinct. I mean, I think that what Zach's like maybe humble to say is that there's it's taste, right? Like, but those have told me about directing, and I always heard before I directed, there's like not the old adage is directing is 90% casting, and I was skeptical of that. And as years have gone by, I've become more and more convinced of it. And it is as you look at all these actors who Zach cast and how good they are and what they've gone on to do, it's a testament to Zach's taste. And his taste is very, as he says, intuitive. I don't know if you can learn it or teach it. He has a feeling. He is sort of what being like a filmmaker with a point of view is. As soon as he sees that thing, it bounces off him. It's very wonderful to work with somebody who's not clouded by a bunch of other thoughts or opinions or what are people going to say or what are they going to do or what are they going to say, or how many followers they have, whatever it is, immediately. And that's, he knows, and he has an opinion and a strong one, and that's kind of what you want as an actor, very much. Whether it's good or bad, like, are we doing this or are we doing that? You want me for the movie or you don't? You know what I mean? Both are fine. I just want to know. Let's not do 15 auditions, you know what I mean, and do a whole circus. And that's one of the beautiful things about Zack and his process is that he is works by instinct and decisive and absolutely self-assured of that. And it's a very calming thing to have in a director go, okay, he knows where we're going, so I'm going to follow him.